Hello, welcome everyone. You are at the keynote session. So just a little bit of housekeeping. We are recording this session, and just to let you all know that, so mark it on your on your screens. My name is Tracy Ortiz, and I'm going to be the moderator for this session. Before we begin, on behalf of ADEIL, we'd like to thank our generous sponsor, Noodle, for actually sponsoring this event, and for our host, Old Dominion University. So we're very thankful for their contributions in making this event possible. Just to also note that we will be going through and randomly selecting session winners. So during this keynote, I'll be looking for a winner for this session that we will announce at the end. So I'll let you know that sometime during the session. But without further ado, I would like to thank you and welcome you in joining us for the session titled Examining the Challenges and Opportunities of ChatGPT in Distance Education by Dr. Helen Crompton. Dr. Helen Crompton is the Executive Director of the Research Institute for Digital Innovation and Learning at ODU Global. She's also the Professor of Instructional Technology and the Director of the Virtual Reality Lab at Old Dominion University. She's published over 150 manuscripts on educational technology and is well recognized for her outstanding contributions, including a place on Stanford's list of the top 2% of scientists in the world. Dr. Crompton's expertise extends beyond academia to practice, as she frequently works with governments and bilateral and multilateral organizations such as the United Nations and the World Bank, leveraging her knowledge and experience to drive meaningful change in the field of educational technology at a global level. Welcome, Dr. Helen Crompton.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the introduction, and thank you very much for the invitation to speak at this event. So as you can see there, examining the challenges and opportunities of ChatGPT in distance education. So covering ChatGPT, we'll cover the big questions of what it is, why it matters, the challenges, and the potentials. So for questions, please feel free to ask in the question and answer, and I'll give a bit of time at the end, hopefully, to answer some of those. So ChatGPT has caused a great stir globally in every corner of the world, in every discipline, job, role. It has caused a great stir. However, I will say everyone in education needs to sit up and pay attention. This is very, very crucial. So there has been 3 times in history where education has been dramatically changed because of a digital technology. Of those times, the first one, not actually as digital, but technology nonetheless, the Gutenberg printing press. That made a huge contribution to how information is spread. So the Gutenberg printing press, quick overview, it provided print, it provided books, not just to those in religion, that could in the churches that were allowed to have it, or those that were very rich and that could afford it. It meant books for everybody, information for everybody. And the second one, can anyone guess what the second one is? Some other technology that allowed information to go much further, much more rapidly as well. Yes, that's exactly it. You can see in the chat there, feel free to work with me on the chat. Just put messages in there and I'll look at those where possible. Absolutely right. It's the internet. Many of us can remember the big ruckus when we found students can go out and actually get information for themselves and even fact check what the faculty member was saying. That was perhaps the start of digital literacy skills in students, critical thinking, checking all the facts. But Gutenberg printing press, internet, and now it is ChatGPT. ChatGPT is as big, in my point of view, as the internet. and many. This is having such a profound impact. It's not just information accessible, and it's even packaged in different ways to make it even more. And people are having a lot more excitement and panic. Both are very valid responses. So let's actually look how all this came about. So I'm actually going to start with Google, which you will not see here, and that's a big reason. So Google actually had this technology that developed ChatGPT. They had it, and they didn't think it was really relevant. So they actually passed it off and said, oh no, OpenAI, you can have it. OpenAI saw this potential of what they could do with it, and they checked in with Microsoft, and Microsoft gave them 1 billion. And out of that 1 billion, they developed ChatGPT. Now, if you're thinking about the stir in education at the moment with ChatGPT, that came out of the 1 billion. Microsoft have now given them 10 billion. So the future, kind of like the mind boggles what's going to happen in the future. But this is the start. As we'll chat later, ChatGPT is one of many. You'll hear about Bard, Claude from Anthropic. There's many different ways, and ChatGPT is in many different programs. But it is a chatbot. So as you can see on the left, many people were always familiar with the basic chatbots. We went onto websites for banking, for purchasing items, and it would respond to simple words, simple keywords, and chat back to us. Typically, we'd know we were talking to a machine, but it would hold a fairly good conversation in an enclosed topic. Now, ChatGPT is in a different place. It's much more advanced in answering questions. And so if you think about it, it answers questions. So many maybe are asking, well, we've had Google, the home of ubiquitous answers, that has answered questions for so long. And Google actually have not changed in about 20 years. It's kind of the same thing. However, one little thing that has changed that we might have noticed is the amount of advertisements that come at the top of the pages before they get to those websites that they're giving us with the answers. So Google earn 58% of their revenue from those advertisements at the top of Google search. So that's probably why we've seen more and more. So again, the last 20 years, Google's worked, we've kind of asked questions, and it's taken us to websites to give us the answers. Well, when ChatGPT came out, Google issued a code red. We weren't supposed to hear about that, but it was leaked, that they absolutely panicked because this was a huge competition now. They were blown out of the water in many ways by ChatGPT and what it could do. So let's take a look at what it can do. So you have a similar kind of interface to Google in that it has a box there. You can see the one at the bottom. And I've put in the question, design a lesson plan for undergraduate students on algebraic relationships. So we might put that into Google and it'll send us to the website. Here, rather than websites, it tells us exactly what we want to know. The answer to the question, the answer to a task that we've asked it to do, creating something. And I'm going to go on to the next slide here to show you even further. So if we scroll down that page, we can see a great detailed plan that it's provided there from that prompt. What's also nice is you can see at the bottom box there, I'm asking it to tell me more about, activity 5. And unlike Google, where you'd have to type everything in again, it has a conversation back and forward. So that's a very, very big difference. In a way, I always think of this, it's like talking to an expert being and asking questions and not having to repeat myself all over again. It just kind of tells me those answers. And yeah, Rob, saying Google's been around for a while. Yes, a long while. So what is GPT? GPT is not just connected to ChatGPT. GPT tells people information about what it's doing, where it's getting its information from, and what's happening. In fact, GPT is used in quite a few things. Even Apple GPT, Apple's got its own version now, Apple GPT. There's all sorts of other things. There's the protein folding program, Prote GPT-2. So this has been around for a while. For educators, if you're not computer science people, this still matters. It completely matters, especially the first two. So GPT stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. Generative in that it generates something, it creates something. And it's not the only one that does this. This is a whole field of AI that generates different things from text, images, video, audio, many different things like that. You might have heard of DALL-E 2, Midjourney. They're great at creating images. And ChatGPT creates text at the moment. We'll have to say that because, again, as it's moving on, it's actually going into images. So generative, it creates. Pre-trained, in that it has been given a large amount of data, and that's where it's getting its answers from. And we're going to have a look at that in a second. And the last piece there is the transformer. This is the magical computer science, artificial intelligence that's been developed that we can do all these things with now, such as ChatGPT. But for educator, transformer just means it's the architecture of the AI model. But those first two in particular are very important. So the pre-trained, the ChatGPT, like the one I showed you there on the last slide, it has information from Bing search, because remember it was connected to Microsoft. Microsoft's search engine was Bing. So all the information from the web, all that information from Bing up to 2021 has gone in. Wikipedia and a few other things, ChatGPT, OpenAI wasn't as clear in what they were, but there were other things added in for data. Then they ran ChatGPT and asked people to look at answers, saying, is that good? Is that one better? And they would label to see what they thought was good. Then you had ChatGPT, and the arrow is it's never finished. It's never stopping. Every time we use ChatGPT, it's constantly taking that information in. So at the research institutes here, ODU Global, we've done a lot of research to find out what's happening with ChatGPT. We search, first of all, what's called the grey literature, all podcasts, magazines, whatever. Then we actually did a very rigorous search of peer-reviewed journal articles that have actually been using ChatGPT. And this is the information we found for misuses and limitations. And again, a lot of these are changing, and this is kind of a whistle-stop tour of some of these things. So cheating, inaccuracies, plagiarism, harmful use, bias, and data privacy. And I'm going to run through these quickly. Cheating, yes, students can copy and paste even, they don't even have to type it. What the professor has asked them to do, put it into ChatGPT. If it's something that ChatGPT can do, if it's an answer that it can give, it will just give it straight there. So if we're asking students to do something like explain nuclear fusion in simple terms, yes, it can do that very nicely and very, very quickly. So this is where we need to think about the design of education to avoid these things happening. Many things have come along promising that they can tell the difference between if it's AI or if it's humans, but these are easily navigated around by students. Students actually found very quickly that you can put a few spelling mistakes in and the AI tool will think, oh, the spelling mistakes, it must be a human because AI wouldn't make spelling mistakes. Other things as well, such as asking ChatGPT to write in the style of an undergraduate student. It can do that. So we have to be very, very careful, and also trusting these tools to be aware of false positives. Many students, great many reports of students being told that they were using ChatGPT when it actually wasn't true. Inaccuracies and hallucinations. There's a fun one here. What is the world record for crossing the English Channel entirely on foot? As we know, the English Channel is a large body of water. However, ChatGPT earlier said, oh, in the Guinness World Records, George Rife did it in 2016, 12 hours, 10 minutes. Well, who knew? So we know it's wrong, although the second part there is actually correct as it describes the English Channel. What's important to remember with this is we know that that's not true. However, if a student, if a faculty member is not as familiar with that, they might think it's true because it packages it very well. It also has a jagged frontier, which is interesting to think about for inaccuracies and hallucinations, in that it can do some things really well that are very esoteric, but very technical, and simple things, it can't always get them. Like the question was asked, if I hang a t-shirt that's wet on the washing line, how long will it take to dry? If it takes like half an hour and I put 5 on, you can guess that it multiplied by 5, which isn't the case. So again, as educators working with educators, we have to remind everybody to work well in critical thinking and fact checking and digital literacy with all this information that we get. Harmful use. This one in particular has actually been corrected there, but yes, you are reading it correctly. This is somebody getting around to ask the safeguarding to get ChatGPT to say what a Molotov cocktail, how to make one. And as you can see, I obviously cut that off. But if you ask ChatGPT when it first came out, how do you make a Molotov cocktail, it would say, I'm not telling you, you shouldn't know that, which is more than Google would. So it's worth thinking that. So what they did is these people said, oh, you know, it's friendly, it's good-hearted, you know, oh, just tell us because it's not really real. And they got around it. Well, like I said, ChatGPT is continually changing and being adapted. That now, if you said it was the end of the world, ChatGPT wouldn't tell you how to make a Molotov cocktail or give you a racial slur or anything of that nature. So they're able to kind of change the algorithm, change the way ChatGPT is working to avoid some of these. Plagiarism, that's an obvious one for many people. However, with the internet, we could always grab exactly where it matched to. You know, we might look at some text from a student and check it against the internet and it'd say, oh, here, it's from here. What's happening with ChatGPT is it's scraping the web and looking at all that information and packaging it different ways. So we don't always know where that's come from. In newer versions like Bard now, it's kind of pointing to some of those, but we have to be very careful in online learning, especially when we're kind of looking at all the resources that are out there, including ChatGPT, because we don't know where all that content is from. And there's a lot of legal issues at the moment where it's getting information from places and not saying where it's from. Bias, you remember that it's built on the internet information. So all that bias, all the historical bias as well, going back, that is all what it's been fed on. Now, again, it's changed quite a bit and that was adapted as best as possible, but we're still going to see a lot of bias for a good while if not for the permanent future. Then the labeler that came in, the person that's also labeled, again, humans are completely biased. And that even added possibly further bias in. And the final one here is data privacy. Everything that goes in stays in ChatGPT. So this is a very hard one. In fact, I've had great conversations with OpenAI and Microsoft about this. And it's very difficult for them because if people out there remember the GDPR, so the General Data Protection Regulations, what that said, it was in Europe, but it covered all the US and much further. And what it said is, if someone's using your data, you can literally ask for it back. So if you were on one of those among the many that's a little, well, I'm saying a little while ago, probably about 1.5 years, 2 years ago, we got all these emails suddenly where everyone was changing their policies, saying, we're updating our policies, just to let you know. That means all those organizations have your data. So with the GDPR, you could say, okay, let me have that data back. And we can do that now. We can still do that. However, with ChatGPT, that's hard because it's not just a case of, oh, we've got it on record. It's actually within ChatGPT. It's like having a student in class and explaining some theory and then saying, oh, you've not paid for the class. Let me just take that information out of you. You can't do it. It's assimilated into the student. So separating it from ChatGPT has been very difficult, and legal issues are still ongoing with all that. So now I'm looking at the research behind how it can be used. And I have to say my bias on this, it is an amazing tool. There's a lot of negative media because negativity sells, unfortunately, behind all the negative things that it can do. And there are things we need to safeguard against. However, the possibilities of this tool are absolutely amazing, endless, that we can do. So I think we need to kind of focus sometimes, being very aware of what I've just shared about the challenges and limitations, but then go forward and think about how to use this. So there's 5 main areas there, and we've continued with the research, and this has actually stayed pretty stable. So content creation, personalized engaged learning, tutoring and 24/7 support, assessment tool, and task automation. And I'm going to go through each of these with just a couple of examples. So content creation. We could ask ChatGPT, provide some examples of discussion prompts for promoting critical thinking in an online discussion. It is great for discussion prompts. Educators are great at doing things, but sometimes it's nice to have kind of this co-pilot that's giving you extra ideas. Second one there, provide some tips for incorporating project-based learning in an astronomy class. So it creates a lot of things. As expert educators, though, we always look at what it's giving us before we use any of this. Sometimes it can just be a great start, kind of as a springboard to go further. So personalized engage, provide with some examples of real-world applications of algebra that I can use to make my lessons more relevant and meaningful to students. Write this description at an easier level in the style of something or an extension activity. Let me give you an example of that. I do enjoy this example, but a while ago, we were looking at something very esoteric. We're looking at the Doppler theory. And we asked ChatGPT to explain the Doppler theory for, I think it was an 8th grader to understand, for a young child to understand, and write it in the style of Snoop Dogg, the rapper. And we actually showed it to some children around that age. And one girl in particular, she was just kind of, wow, I completely understand it. That makes so much sense. Quite often faculty worry that we're talking in a different language to our students. This might be a great way of helping. Or even if we've got students that like stories, songs, we can change some of that using ChatGPT into a package that's ready for them that they can understand. I want to also think about students. Lots of us are working with faculty, different educators from a lot of different disciplines, and they worry about their students using ChatGPT. Well, one, going back to the cheating and things mentioned earlier, we do need to change some of our assignments. We do need to think about things in different ways. However, students can use this as an amazing tool. Many will be familiar with the zone of proximal development. That is what the student can do, and then what the student can do with a little bit of support, and then they can go so much further. This is a great tool for zone of proximal development. Have students thinking about ways they can use it, such as explain, this concept to me, give me some real world examples, provide study strategies. I'm about to start a geometry class, provide me with a glossary of difficult words. There's many tools out there that are really supportive of students and their learning, especially for those students that didn't quite get it, and they can go home and ask for a little bit further explanation. Assessment tool. Now, I've been watching very, very carefully. Things change all the time. And for assessment tools, there were ways that people started using it to actually assess student work. So they would put a paragraph. They wouldn't put, obviously, personal details in. We have to be careful of FERPA in particular. And it's not something we do, we'll put personal details in. But if actually a student's written a paragraph, it would be great to kind of ask ChatGPT to, look at it, review it, and provide feedback to support us like a peer review. But we have to be careful because, in fact, that could overlap into FERPA, that we shouldn't put any student work in ChatGPT as well as the details. But there are ways we can use it, such as provide examples of types of assessments I can use. Create a test on this. It can do multiple choice. It can create tables. Lots of people don't realize the table functionality it has, which is really, really good. But we can do all these things. If you have faculty that you're working with, or you are a faculty member, and you have to do repeated testing, you have to keep changing them just slightly to make sure they've not been handed to the next set of students. This is a great tool for doing that. But again, there's always that caveat. You have to check it. Don't just take it as, oh, there it is. You always have to go back and use your expertise to make sure it's right. Task automation. It is wonderful for helping with emails, summarizing text. There's many ways. A lot of activities that we do in front of a computer on our own, away from the students. These can speed up some of those things that we can actually spend longer with the students. Now, I'm going to start talking about prompts, but as I'm doing this now and thinking about prompt engineering, I want to remind you that this isn't just ChatGPT. There's many other programs. Claude with Anthropic is another very good one. Not as advertised as the Google ones and the Microsoft, but Claude has a lot of ethical restrictions on it so that they put in to make it very, very effective. And in fact, I've put a few people onto that and they enjoy it and use Claude more than anything else. Google's got Bard. Again, similar things. We have to think with how to use the prompts. And in fact, Bard has been having a real struggle kind of catching up. There are reports that Google are going to release Gemini, which is supposed to be apparently better than ChatGPT 4, the paid version. So we'll have to see. Again, this is only the beginning. But let's think about the prompts that we are putting into ChatGPT to get what we need out. I always say rubbish in, rubbish out. So with the Research Institute, we developed a prompt engineering framework. So when you're writing, this really refines to what you want. Often when I've looked at people's things that they're typing in, their questions, their asks, they're often just focused on one thing, but this is a great framework to have you thinking a little bit further, like purpose. What is the product format you want? Do you want an email, a song, a story? Purpose can also go into asking to ChatGPT to act as an expert in something. Do you remember me saying right back at the beginning that it was nice to have this entity, this thing, that it was as if it was a person, you know, an expert that you could ask these questions. You could ask ChatGPT to be an expert. So your prompts would start, acts as an expert instructional designer and do this. And it would pull specifically from those areas of expertise. Next one is tone. This is often forgotten, but makes a huge difference. So think about the tone. So such as the excitement, humorous, professional, friendly. So that also goes into the tone. So you could have it kind of like the style of a rapper, Shakespeare, whatever it needs to be. So purpose, I want an email, I want a song, I want a story, I want a lesson plan. The tone that you want, the style. Audience is the next one. Who is it for? That'll make a difference to the length, the language, the culture. Then once you have those top three, you're going to reflect, you're going to look back at the question and say, you know, critically, is this what I want to ask? Has this got all of the pieces? And then hit send and see what it comes back with. And don't just think that's it. You then can refine, you can say, you know, I would like a little bit more on this topic. I would like it shorter. I would like it longer. You could even say to ChatGPT, can you please check to make sure this is correct? You can ask it. And in fact, sometimes if you're not too sure, it will come back and say, oh, yes, I'm sorry. That was actually incorrect. This is the correct answer. So again, like a person, you can ask it to fact check itself and its own answers. So hopefully that is helpful, the prompt engineering framework there. And as promised, I'm leaving time here for questions. I will say it's great that you're joining and listening to these. It's great that you might be looking out and reading articles and things, but you have to know the tools themselves. It's worth exploring these, testing out, seeing what it can do, and kind of using your imagination about what education can look like. And I'm going to pass to Tracy. I'll stop sharing for questions.
Okay, thank you, Helen. So we had several comments in the chat. There was one question though. If someone wanted to use that framework that you put up there, that colorful one, is there a citation they should be accrediting? Or
that's a great question. If they check in, we can hand that over, but that's not yet published. It's in the moment in peer review.
Okay. So we will keep an eye out on that. So there were several comments, and I'm going to start with how they were commenting on AI in education beyond ChatGPT, and they did put in some links in there to go investigate on some of what you were saying. One of the comments that is higher up in the chat was when you were talking about how AI has been around for a while, and someone brought up Jeeves, Ask Jeeves. And I remember that myself, that was around. And so the people were remembering and dating themselves back then.
Yes. And in fact, Clippy. Does anyone remember the little paper clip? Clippy, I think it was called. That was another one. Yes. Yes. Rob says yes.
Yeah. So, and continuing on, one other observation, if you use it to create a test, it will be in that database. So something to consider.
Is the person putting information in to create the test, or are they asking it to create the test? Because if they're asking ChatGPT just to create the test, it's just gathering it, scraping that internet information and bring it in. But yes, if it's the case that somebody's putting information in, yes, it will have that data. In some ways, I think these conversations with ChatGPT and putting some basic information can only actually benefit us if we're wanting to use it in the future, because it's learning continually. So it's kind of nice to have it, but if it's proprietary information, that's, yeah, you don't put anything into ChatGPT that you don't want it to have.
Okay, let me switch over. There is something in the Q&A that I do want to ask. Could you elaborate on the tone used in the prompt? Maybe an example or two?
Yes. Oh, so it's such fun that you can have with it. So you could say, okay, ChatGPT, write me an email to the chair of my department to say, unfortunately, I cannot serve on this whatever social committee because of my other things that I have to do. You could ask that email and you could say, write this in a very friendly, joyous tone. And it's great. And you can also ask it then to write in an angry, legalistic tone, and it'll produce something very, very different. I mean, they're kind of silly examples, but you can see the dramatic difference between the two. So it makes it very, very different. The tone, whether you want it professional or friendly. In fact, when I do my prompts, I always use tone. I usually use a comment such as, I write this in a professional, academic tone to get what I need. Otherwise, it will go middle of the level tone for kind of middle of the level people kind of thing. It's like in anything in education, it will go for the middle bar. So we want it to say exactly what we want it to be.
Yeah, some have mentioned that they use it to ask for the tone to address the audience, like in children, and it's done a great job at doing that.
Yes, I actually had my 84-year-old father, and he's from Yorkshire in England, and I asked it to explain. We tried the Doppler theory. I said explain the Doppler theory in the style of an old Yorkshireman, and we had great fun with that. But think of it from the education side. Think of it connecting it to the language that the students are speaking. Like, ask it to speak like an undergraduate.
Definitely.
And I've got a great Ollie, thank you, up. Yes, it was great fun. And what's nice is if you look at the fun things, you can then get a really good understanding of what it can do and then go, oh, I could use this for this point in education to reach this student. Often one here that I will do is ask it to explain something. Like for a graduate level, ask it to explain it as if it was an undergraduate. They don't need to know the students, but it just might make an easier way of doing it that they can understand. Explain for an 8-year-old, yes.
Yeah. So many people, that framework is very popular, Helen, and they are wanting to use that. But yeah, but you did mention that it's in peer review.
They can email me, and let me put it up again, because I will, if people want to take a screenshot as well, you're welcome to. If you can mention it back to the Research Institute for Digital Innovation in Learning at ODU Global, that will be great. And I'm just going to leave that for a few more seconds for people to get access to. And okay, closing down. And I'll also put my email in, which can connect directly back to ADEIL as well there.
And wanting to know who to credit for that.
And that would be me for ADEIL. So let's have a look. Who should we credit, please? And again, there's the full date is not quite there yet. Review. And we don't know the full title yet, but it's ADEIL ODU Global.
Yeah, and Dimitri also put some information in there in the chat just now too. So thank you for that.
Lovely.
And
yes, thank you. So I know we've only got a couple of minutes left, but I'm just having a look for any other questions. Yeah, the framework was
very popular.
And Geo, the garbage in, garbage out, rubbish in, rubbish out. Could we tell ChatGPT to deliberately give wrong answers to anyone that pastes in our assessment? That would be lovely, but unfortunately it doesn't work. No, that. And it's very difficult as well for faculty, because if they ask, if all the students in the whole of the class paste in the same prompt to ChatGPT, none of those, it's mind whether there are 500 in the class, not one would be identical. So it's very hard to see. So we're in a point where we need to think of doing things different ways. Let me give you a quick last example now. So I always used to have a research paper at the end of my class, and I teach education technology. So for masters, PhDs, so those that are teaching teachers, they would write on the topic education technology. Well, instead now I've given 3 options. They have to do just 2 of these. One is I ask them to debate with ChatGPT on one of the topics, such as mobile learning, BYOD, something like that. Because I do like choice. Students should have choice. So the debate, you ask ChatGPT to debate, and the debate goes back and forth. And when the students submit, they have to submit the whole thing, including, you can see where ChatGPT with the icon wrote, and they can see their little picture and what they wrote. So the first one's debate. The second one is I ask them to ask ChatGPT to pretend that they are a principal in a school or at a university that very much values education technology. And they're asking ChatGPT to interview them. And it's amazing what it does. It really gives great questions, and it listens to what the students respond back to go back and forth. And then the third one is I asked them to have ChatGPT write a paper. Then I asked them to critique the whole thing, looking for bias, or if it's looking for frameworks, if the frameworks are good ones that it's choosing, or whether it should go with something else. So they're just kind of 3 ideas that you could perhaps think about. But if you get really stuck, you could always ask ChatGPT for ideas. Okay.
That's great. We have 1 minute left. There is one more question.
Okay.
At what age should we teach this from?
Oh, good question. So ChatGPT, OpenAI that developed this, they had it always set you had to be 21 or older to use their products. Then ChatGPT came out and they lowered it to I'm trying to remember, 12, 13, but all the way up to 21 years old, they had to have parental guidance. So basically, they were handing the legal side over to the parents. So 13 and below that, students shouldn't be using it, but teachers, the educators that work with young children can use it to help them develop things for those young children. So hopefully that answered the question. Yeah, youngest 13.
Yeah. So thank you so much. We are at the end and 1 minute over. So thank you for sharing this time with us. We want to thank Dr. Helen Crompton for her experience with everything that she discussed today. And thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of the conference. We have a few more session times left and our closing remarks. So I did choose a session winner. So, and I messaged them, but we're going to announce all that at the end. So make the closing remarks. So you might win something. Okay. Thank you, everybody.